Interface Video presents Fairfield Today. Brought to you by Fairfield Federal Savings and Loan, Fairfield Medical Center, Fairhope Hospice and Palliative Care, the Fairfield County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and the Frankie Smith Funeral Home.
Hello friends, and welcome to Fairfield Today. I'm your host, Paul Jasson. Thank you for joining us. And as we tape today on this beautiful morning in Lancaster, it is sunny, another beautiful day. We're not getting tired of that, even though here we are and still in the winter here in Central Ohio. But what a fabulous time it's been. I feel sorry for all the people that plow snow this winter. It's sure been a difficult winter for them, but there's always an upside and a downside. For us, it's the good. For them, not so good. But we've been most appreciative. We're not out of it yet, but whatever happens, I'm sure it'll be a much shorter time span than we could have had over this entire winter. So as we tape today, it's a beautiful day. We thank you for joining us. We are again in the lobby here of Fairfield Federal downtown. Our guest today, and we're going to be fortunate enough to have him for the whole show today. It's really a local boy that maybe most people, I'm not sure, they may have read his name, but now we'll put a face to the name, Kirk Davis. Kirk, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Kirk, I think for the most part, he'd be known as the older brother of Commissioner Steve Davis.
Yes.
In Lancaster, that's how you would be known.
It is.
That's right. His brother.
And actually, I'm very proud of that.
That's right. Steve's done very well. Steve, of course, is his younger brother, and Steve is an attorney and for now quite a lengthy time, a county commissioner. He would be known for that. But in anywhere but Lancaster, he is Kirk Davis, CEO of Gatehouse Media, which may not, again, mean too much to us here, but this is the company that owns the Columbus Dispatch. Bought them 2 or 3 years ago?
2015.
2015. So it's been a couple years. Big news when that happened. You know, I'm somebody that grew up when I was younger, reading the paper every day. I had read the CJ in the morning, yes, the Citizen Journal, and the Dispatch was an evening paper. And then as things happen, things get absorbed and things change, and then it became just the Columbus Dispatch, and now it's a morning paper. It has been forever and ever. But you are operating out of Boston. Would that be Gatehouse Media, somewhere near Boston?
Yes, I live outside of Boston. Our headquarters is in Pittsford, New York.
Okay.
And we have a strong presence in New York City, too.
That's great. You've always, and the first part of our show, I thought we just, small town boy makes good. That's sort of our take on this now, because let's go back to your days. You are a proud Lancaster High School graduate.
Yes, I am, 79.
1979.
Golden Gale.
A Golden Gale, and I know when you were here, you were involved in plays and media things. That was something you were very involved in.
Yes, I would say growing up, my fondest memories would be around all the opportunities I had with musical theater. I came from a musical family, although I would say also that sports was a pretty strong thread too. So it's required to play all the sports. It wasn't really an option, but certainly experiences like, I guess my fondest memory would be the musical Oliver at OSU. Was in that show. My dad was in that show, and a number of other productions at the high school. Love theater. Still love going to see as many shows as possible.
Well, you live in a place where you can really take that in now,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and you know, with investors and such, I do get to New York City a lot, and so I take every opportunity to see some of the wonderful
I'm forced to go to
there.
another play today. I have.
Yes.
Have you been to Hamilton?
I have not, actually. That is still on the bucket list.
That's a bucket list thing?
It is.
Yeah, that might even be a tough ticket for you. I'm not sure it would be. For me, I know it would, but that's a difficult ticket to get now.
It is a difficult ticket, maybe a little bit easier now with some of the changeover of cast members, but it's still very much on the list.
We mentioned Steve as your brother. Linda Davis was Kirk's mother, and many of you remember her from Banking Days, Farmers and Citizens. I think she was there,
Yes.
and again, some things there changed. I don't know if she ever left her job. I mean, eventually she went to Standing Stone and was there for a time. But the things, she was always a banker, always in the banking world, and I knew her as just out of high school, or actually in high school, and that's really the only thing she ever did her entire life.
It is. She was charitable. She had some stints at United Way, but I think the thing that she took the most pride in was her banking career, and that extended into the household in a big way. So our household budget was her domain. And the impetus to get out and earn money at every turn, raking leaves, shoveling snow, mowing lawns, bring the money back. Let's talk about how we apportion it to savings, a little for spending. She was very financially disciplined.
And I would say something like that, I'm sure, imprints you for your life. I mean, even now you can talk about it, you remember it, but money in a good way was an impactful thing in your life as a young person.
It was, and I would say that, when you're growing up, you don't know what you don't know, so I had everything I needed, but I now have such a great, respectively, I have such a great admiration and appreciation for how my mom did so much perceptively to me anyway, with so little. It was amazing. Tremendous impression on me today, and very grateful actually for everything she taught me. She was a great inspiration, and I was sorry to lose her a couple years ago. But the one thing that I'll always be grateful for is she'd always encouraged me all through my career. You need to get to the dispatch. You need to work there so you can come home. And that wasn't practical for a variety of reasons going through my career, but I did have the chance to talk to her a couple months before she passed about
so she
the
knew
fact
about
that
what was
the company was acquiring the Columbus Dispatch, and I'd be spending a lot of time there, coming home to see her. It's only 30 minutes away from Columbus here, but unfortunately, cancer got the better of her, and but she still was quite proud.
Well, so you graduate from Lancaster High School. You go to The Ohio State University.
Actually, I went to Wright State University.
Wright State, okay.
Yeah, got a small scholarship for theater.
Majored in?
Theater.
Yeah,
that's
the
BFA acting program.
Yeah.
And after a year, realized that as good as I thought I was coming out of Lancaster, the talent that I encountered at Wright State,
Really?
some of the best students all over the country, was astounding.
Do they have a well-known drama?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Their BFA acting program was really highly rated. They had incredible placement record for students coming out of Wright State for Broadway, for movies, films. So I did realize that I was in a little over my head, and came back to a high university and took economics courses, and that's when I actually got my job at the Eagle Gazette.
Yeah, and you worked at the Eagle Gazette several years.
I did.
And,
Yes.
And did you know you wanted to go into the newspaper business, or was that just a job at that point?
So that's a great question. There's no doubt that when I went in, it was just one of the jobs available at the time, and it was called a district manager, where you work with the kids that deliver the newspapers. And my goodness, if they didn't deliver the newspaper, you had to in their place. So kept you quite humble to know that you could be out delivering the newspapers. And but when I interviewed with the then publisher Richard Foreman,
wow,
and that
name
goes back
from the
a
past.
ways, it does. I remember sitting in the office, and I remember seeing all the plaques for all the various awards that the paper had earned. I was humbled by thinking of the number of times I couldn't wait to read the paper and see my name in it, for whether it was academics or sports or theater. And this is true. In that moment, while I was going to hopefully land this job to work with the newspaper carriers, I did realize that I'd like to be a publisher of a newspaper someday, and that was going to be what I would do.
Wow.
That moment, and I began that quest when I landed that job. And it's been a long journey to achieve that, but I knew then it was the most noble job I could think of, and he baited me with it a little bit. Someday you might be a publisher of a newspaper. So that was enough for me.
So you work at the Eagle Gazette for several years, and it's time to move on. What's your next step?
So I had the opportunity to work at a number of newspapers in Ohio, in Piqua, Ohio. I had Newark, Ohio on the radar. I worked there, and those were all with the same parent company, moving around each year, a little promotion, and then eventually out to Toms River, New Jersey, for a different newspaper company, the same sort of role, circulation management, the distribution, the consumer side of the business. And I worked on the consumer side, distribution, marketing, circulation, as we call it, for a number of years in St. Louis. I did that. And then I had that opportunity when I was about 28 to move into management of a newspaper, and started with a small paper in Pennsylvania, and from there went back to Massachusetts, out to California, and I would say it was about 95 that I came to Boston, and I've been in Boston since then. But when I arrived in Boston, it was to run a large group of newspapers, and that's just kind of gravitated to this opportunity I ended up with Gatehouse, and ascending in my role with that company to where I have the privilege today to be the CEO.
It's interesting when you look back on a journey, and as you're moving through the journey, you don't know. Right. I mean, what will be the next step? It might not even be in the newspaper business. I mean, you never know. And even back then, the newspapers were going very strong. But you never know. Things happen. You're not the owner. You're not the boss.
Yep.
Things could happen. But now you look back on that journey, and probably each step along the way primed you for the next step. And all of that collective knowledge probably led you where you are today.
I would say that's true. One of the things about moving to so many different cities that I did, there were some common threads. First and foremost, how you adapt to the culture and the geography and some of the differences in plying this trade that exists between the Midwest or the East Coast or the West Coast. I think also one thread for all of those moves was that I seemed to gravitate towards those big challenges, those turnaround situations, and so risk-taking was very prevalent in a lot of these career choices,
you married at this point, you had a family,
yeah.
So everybody had to buy into this.
Yes, it is a big commitment on everyone, and I think, I guess, true for a lot of professions. Maybe it's more about who you are than the industry you're in, but I've always had a strong work ethic, so I work a lot of hours. I would say my hobby these days is as much my work as my hobby. I just I thrive on trying to figure out solutions to lead media through this transformational period that we're all witnessing.
And we're going to talk about that later, because transformational is a good word for that now. I mean, everybody knows what's going on in even before the latest things that are about the media right now. It's been a difficult time for newspapers for quite a while now. We can see the I was going to say viewership, the readership is going down. It's struggling. Some papers are out, some have merged. It's a different ballgame from when you certainly started in it. So now you're up in the Toms River, you're up in that area right there. Now you eventually get to Gatehouse Media. You ascend to this CEO position. At some point, it looks good to acquire the Columbus Dispatch. Is that something you thought about? That's close to home, that would be a good thing, or it was strictly a business decision?
Yeah, great question. Gatehouse is an acquisitive company right now. We have really probably acquired more newspapers in the last few years than any other newspaper group in the United States.
Really?
And today we own more newspapers in the United States than any other company. We're about $1.2 billion in revenue, and we have about 10,000 employees. So it is our business model to leverage our scale and the ideas and the innovations that we've identified to help local media companies grow. So we aspire to be that company that's there for a lot of family owners that decide at this point it's the right time for them or their family to exit. And that's the case in Columbus. The Wolf family, who's been remarkable to the Columbus market, and maybe even more broadly, just the role the Dispatch has played in Ohio and Ohio politics. They made that decision that it was the right time for their family to separate the television assets they had from the newspaper business. And so, as is often the case, I think families evaluate a number of options on how they transition ownership, and sometimes that's all about maybe the price, and sometimes it's about a lot of things more than that. Whether it's a company's values or how they evaluate the company's goals for the business. I think all those were in play for the Wolf family, and Mr. Wolf felt we were the best trustee for the Dispatch going forward. Wasn't anything that we targeted. It's just an opportunity that became available to us. But of course, for me personally, it was maybe one of the most exciting moments in my entire career to realize I was going to come home and tell my mom and dad, that I'm going to be visiting more often because we own the Dispatch. So
we're talking with Kirk Davis. Kirk is CEO of Gatehouse Media. They are the parent company of the Columbus Dispatch. We're going to talk about newspapers, the media, where this whole industry is headed, where they think the Columbus Dispatch is headed in all this mix. When we come back, we'll be back with Kirk and more on Fairfield Today in just a moment. We are back to Fairfield Today. We want to thank the good folks here at Fairfield Federal. And the big word in banking these days is internet banking, personal banking, business banking. Those are kind of the big three in the world of savings and loan, in the world of banking. And I would encourage you to go to fairfieldfederal.com. There are links on that website to each of those segments of this business, Fairfield Federal Savings and Loan. They have the office, of course, here. They have one on the west side at Fair and Pierce, then one up at Cross Creeks Boulevard in Pickerington. ATMs all around. But all that information and much, much more is available on fairfieldfederal.com. They've got the names of all the local folks here who make all the banking decisions. If you're coming into the spring now, looking to do some remodeling, some things with your house, maybe even getting a new home, fairfieldfederal.com is a good place to start. They have a lot of answers right there on their website, and certainly phone numbers and the names of people here at Fairfield Federal you could talk to. So I would encourage you to go to fairfieldfederal.com with all your money needs. A good place to start your chase, whether it is for the money or for the new home. However they can help you, that's a good way to start. fairfieldfederal.com. We're back with Kirk Davis. Kirk, so now the Columbus Dispatch, your baby. You're sort of back home in many ways. You're able to get back here. And we've seen for several years now, demise is certainly too strong a word, but we've seen readership in newspapers all over really struggling. We've seen big newspapers folding. We've seen them in New York, in fact, virtually shells of what they used to be when they were the big dogs in media in New York. Now, not so much anymore. Things have changed in the readership in the newspaper world. He actually bought a copy of the Columbus Dispatch. Give that a nice plug right there. I bought mine today. I'm one of the old school guys who buys a newspaper every day, an Eagle Gazette and a Columbus Dispatch. I read the newspapers. I don't read them online. I prefer not to do that. I would rather have the hard copy. But is that the way things are going, you think, in the media world? Or guys like me, we're old and we're going to be gone someday, and it's young guys like you and even younger who will be into the media.
Oh, goodness. Well, let me unpack that a little bit. So your references about online banking, those parallels run through almost every industry today, and they certainly run through the media business in a big way. Ironically, what I don't think a lot of folks understand with the disruptive forces that the media revolution is bringing right now, we actually reach more people with our media than we ever have. At Gatehouse, I would say 85% of our newspapers are well over 100 years old. But today, they're reaching more people than ever before, given the reach that we have through all of our online channels, multi-format publishing, and of course the printed newspaper. You're correct. For 20 years, on a national basis, the print volume for newspapers has been slowly but steadily declining. And it was really only with the advent of online and the internet that we started to really dig in and explore ways to build our audience through digital. And today, that's an extremely exciting area of our business, not only in how we reach our readers, but also how we serve the local business community, because we're offering a wide array of digital products and services, which in a way is the new way to fund journalism in the way that traditional advertising always did. But here we are today, just news out of the Columbus market, whether it's L Brands or other companies, the malls being disrupted by Amazon. We've had to build our model to be one that's relying on revenues from digital, revenues from print, the combination of the two, I think providing for a very interesting model. Our view at Gatehouse Media is that over the next couple of years, the combination of all these new areas that we're investing in, live events, digital marketing services, digital subscriptions, can really counteract the traditional print declines that we're facing in the industry. And I think that's the sustainable new model for media. Will newspapers always come out in printed format 7 days a week? There have been large newspapers, Cleveland, for example, who years ago decided to print their papers a few days a week in print format and are online the other days. Most of our newspapers are still producing the print edition as they historically have. The Dispatch certainly does. You referenced those consolidations that took place for a number of years between morning and afternoon papers, Citizen Journal, Columbus Dispatch. But I'd say right now, our company, and mind you, we focus on kind of mid-sized communities. We don't own any newspapers in the top 25 markets of the United States. And so that combination of still a good-sized market, but a strong community thread running through it has been really one of the reasons I think we're faring well in the industry. So there'll come a day, I think, when newspapers are published a few days a week in print, perhaps. I don't see that anytime soon. But we've got to obviously keep doing our job well. And the Dispatch today, the Dispatch Media Group, reaches over 1 million people a month through all the different products they have, the wonderful magazines, the events, the weekly newspapers, the daily newspaper, the online products.
Sure.
They're doing a great job there. Very proud of them.
And it's interesting as you speak. I have a lot of friends who are from this town who now live away, and they read the Eagle Gazette online because that's obviously how they can get that. And I'm sure, as you indicated, that's a huge presence for the Columbus Dispatch. People that went to Ohio State that are from Columbus that are no longer here like yourselves, live somewhere else, but now you can still keep up, if you choose, on local events.
And the Dispatch is, I think, wonderfully positioned with some of the assets of the Columbus market and the state of Ohio to do that. A couple that come to mind are I think, really forward-leaning coverage they provided through the elections. And everyone knows how vitally important Ohio is in the Electoral College. Ohio State football, and the fact that we're in the national championship conversation year after year with Urban Meyer. So, the opportunity for people to engage with Dispatch Media on a national basis is richer than ever, and they're doing a fantastic job. But with that, it's still amazing to me to see the quality of work that the newsroom there is doing that really hits home. A couple years ago, they had a series on silent suffering and really took on the plight of suicide, in the region. Last year, it was heroin and the crisis that we face with that. And they do what you would hope with that work. They put a lot of resources into it. They extend that into community forums so that they can make a difference in the communities and expand the dialogue with stakeholders. And they really do a remarkable job. Now, in our company, that would be one of our largest newspapers. So the expectations are high of a paper like the Dispatch.
Sure.
They've got resources, a proud history, a real media leadership role to play in the state. But they step up to it. You know, Brad Harmon, our publisher there, is a really, really committed executive. Alan Miller, very gifted editor, has an extraordinary newsroom, and you know, a very strong employee base that's committed to making sure it thrives in the years to come.
I don't know if it was Kismet, but just watching TV this morning, I saw an ad for the Columbus Dispatch,
Yeah.
and it was just a blue background with white letters on it, and that's all it was, just slide to slide. But it talked about, we print facts, we do this. Some words that I never thought would be big words in the lexicon are vetting. I've heard vetting far more in the last few months, and I always thought that was a car vetting. I didn't know any other vetting. But now the big buzz is the fake news, brought about by lots of different reasons. The media is all about fake news. You can't believe what you see on TV. You certainly can't believe what you read in the newspaper. Is that something to come up in your business meetings and you talk about, like we have to be really careful, or that's just a passing fad?
I don't think it's a passing fad. I think it's a real concern. I think with the advent of so much social media and the access that people have to put news out there that is unedited, or doesn't go through the rigorous process that news that makes our media does by our gifted editors, whether it's in online or print. It's a concern. I do think the fact that it's in the dialogue and discourse right now is a very healthy thing, because this has been a problem. But in our case, I think that gives us an opportunity, or papers like, you know, not just local media properties, but whether it's the New York Times or the Washington Post, to really drive home the point that we're trusted media, that we've been doing this for generations. We have a very careful, thoughtful process in how we curate the news, and that you can trust us. And then beyond that, people are obviously smart enough to know the bias that various national media organizations might bring to the political discussion and such, and gravitate where you may there. But on a local basis and with our online properties, I think the newspaper industry is going to really enjoy a bit of a renaissance here because of that trust factor. And we need to obviously treat that with great importance, not ever take that for granted. But I think right now that's one of the strengths that we're enjoying.
100 years ago, I used to work downtown Columbus on Gay Street in the Buckeye Federal Building. I'm sure it's still there. It's probably something else. And every day when I would go downtown, you'd see the banner above the Dispatch, Columbus Dispatch, Ohio's greatest home newspaper. I believe that was what it said back then.
Yes.
And I certainly have believed that all these years. Again, I was a CJ lover in the mornings and then the Dispatch in the evenings, but for 100 years it's been now the Columbus Dispatch. It's in good hands. I can see you care, and it's nice to have somebody you can say, well, I know somebody at the Columbus Dispatch. You know, you're doing a great job. Keep the paper thriving. Those of us my age, and I know a lot younger people too, whether it's online, whether it's the hard copy, we look forward to seeing it every day. And congratulations on a local boy from Lancaster High School and Ohio University, CEO of Gatehouse Media. Congratulations on the wonderful career you're having.
Thank you so much.
Again, I've known him since I'd say since he was born. His mom and dad were, and his brother are just wonderful people. And it's great to have you back and come down to Lancaster and see us. We appreciate it very much. So best of luck in running the Dispatch and all the other newspapers you run. You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. Kirk Davis has been our guest. And this is our edition of Fairfield Today.
Interface Video presents Fairfield Today. Brought to you by Fairfield Federal Savings and Loan, Fairfield Medical Center, Fairhope Hospice and Palliative Care, the Fairfield County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and the Frankie Smith Funeral Home.